welcome back to class. I'm still your friend and your tutor, Dr. Shubola. Today we are looking at adjectival phrase. In the previous classes, we looked at the phrase, the noun phrase, and the verb phrase. But today we examine what adjectival phrase is. One of the things you need to observe that adjectival phrase must be a phrase, not just a word. And that phrase performs the functions of an adjective. It is a phrase that performs the functions of an adjective. And in the structure of that phrase, we have, as usual, the head, which is an adjective, we have pre-modifier and post-modifier. Meaning that in the structure of an adjectival phrase, you observe there must be an adjective and modifiers. Looking at it further, we have pre-modifier, adjective, and post-modifier. For illustration, we have a very afraid of snakes. In the expression, afraid is the head word, very is the pre-modifier, while post-modifier is of snakes. Highly decorated for the events. Highly decorated for the in the structure, we have decorated as the head, which is an adjective, highly pre-modifier, and for the events post-modifier. But we are going further to explain some intricacies and peculiarities of this phrase. One thing you need to notice is that in adjectival phrase, adjectives are mostly pre-modified by intensifying adverbs. Adjectives are mostly pre-modified by intensifying adverbs. For example, fairly honest. In this example, honest is an adjective, while fairly is an adverb, especially intensifying adverb. Really good. How good? Really good. Really is another intensifying adverb that pre-modifies an adjective in an adjectival phrase. Quite fair. Quite fair. Fair is the head word, which is an adjective, but quite is an intensifying adverb. So looking here now under the constituents of pre-modifier, we have fairly, really, quite, which are all intensifying adverbs. Please note that intensifying adverbs pre-modify an adjective in an adjectival phrase, as demonstrated here. But we still need to, we have understood that what pre-modifies the head word in an adjectival phrase is an intensifying adverb. But let's go further to look at what can function as post-modifier. In the structure of adjectival phrase, like we stated earlier, we have the pre-modifier, head, and post-modifier. And we have established that the element that functions as a pre-modifier in adjectival phrase is intensifying adverb. So we can have intensifying adverbs preceding the head word. But in the case of post-modifier, there are some grammatical elements that can post-modify adjectives in an adjectival phrase. The first one is adverb, enough. The adverb, enough. Meaning that enough as an adverb can post-modify an adjective. For example, big enough. How big? Big enough. Enough here post-modifies the adjective big. Likewise, good enough. Good enough. How good is it? Is good enough for our use. Enough here post-modifies the adjective good. Bright enough. Bright enough. In this place also, the adjective bright is post-modified by the adverb enough. So we've been able to demonstrate here that the adverb enough can function as a post-modifier in an adjectival phrase. And another element that can function as a post-modifier in an adjectival phrase is a prepositional phrase. A prepositional phrase. Here we have happy with you. For example, I am happy with you. Happy with you is an adjectival phrase. The head word adjective there is happy. With you is a prepositional phrase that functions as a post modifier in an adjectival phrase. So therefore, with you is a prepositional phrase, and at the same time performing the function of a post modifier in an adjectival phrase. Another example: good for you. Good for you. Good is the adjective that is head of the adjectival phrase, while for you is a prepositional phrase that post modify the good, which is the head word. So for you post modify good in an adjectival phrase. Fond of gossiping. Fond of gossiping. Of gossiping is a prepositional phrase that post modifies the adjective fond. So therefore we have fond of gossiping as an adjectival phrase, where the fond is the head word, and of gossiping as a post modifier. So next one is finite clause. A finite clause can function as a post modifier in an adjectival phrase. Example: certain that you will succeed. Certain that you will succeed. In an example, like in a sentence like, I am certain that you will succeed. So therefore we have certain that you will succeed as an adjectival phrase. Certain is the adjective, which is the head word. That you will succeed is a finite clause. That you will succeed is a finite clause. And you can see that that finite clause post modifies the adjective certain. It post modifies the adjective certain. Likewise, surprised that you could help. Surprised that you could help. In this expression, we have surprised as the head word, which is an adjective because it's an adjectival phrase. That you could help is a finite clause. Why are you surprised? That you could help. That you could help post modifies the adjective surprised. In the adjectival phrase, surprised that you could help. And the last element that can function as a post modifier in an adjectival phrase is non-finite clause. Non-finite clause. Example: glad to meet you. In glad to meet you, glad is the adjective, which is the head word, while to meet you is the post modifier. And the element that functions as a post modifier here is a non-finite clause to infinitive. Another example: eager to travel. Eager to travel. Eager is an adjective, while to travel is a non-finite element. And that non-finite clause post modify the adjective eager. So in this place we have realized there are four basic elements that can function as post modifier of an adjective in an adjectival phrase. The first one, adverb enough, a prepositional phrase, finite clause, and non-finite clause. So in the structure of an adjectival phrase, we have pre-modifier, head, and post-modifier. Let's look at these examples. Very anxious to find you. Very anxious to find you. You know that very is pre-modifier, which is an intensifying adverb. Anxious, the head word. To find you, non-finite clause. Quite sure that you will win. Quite sure that you will win. Here we have quite as a pre-modifier, which is also an intensifying adverb. Sure, which is the head word, and adjective. And that you will win is a finite clause that post modify the adjective sure. Fairly honest with you. Fairly honest with you. Fairly, likewise, is an intensifying adverb that pre-modifies the head word honest. And honest is an adjective. With you is a prepositional phrase. So in the structure of an adjectival phrase, we find this element: pre-modifier, the head word, and post-modifier. But now let's look at the functions of adjectival phrase. Functions of adjectival phrase. Adjectival phrase perform different functions in the sentence structure. Number one, it can function as a pre-modifier in a noun phrase. It can pre-modify a noun phrase. For example, a very tall tree. A very tall tree. In that phrase, very tall is an adjectival phrase. Very tall is an adjectival phrase which pre-modifies the noun head tree. We also have highly experienced workers. Highly experienced workers. Here we have highly experienced as adjectival phrase that pre-modifies the noun workers, telling us the nature, the attributes of the workers we're talking about. Highly experienced is an adjectival phrase that pre-modifies the noun workers in a noun phrase. And the second function is that it functions as subject complement. Subject complements the subject or give us some attributes about the subject or some information about the subject. For example, your car is very beautiful. Your car is very beautiful. The question is that, what is very beautiful? The answer will be your car. So your car here is the subject, is the verb, while very beautiful is the complement, showing us the attributes of the subject car. So therefore, very beautiful, which is an adjectival phrase, modifies or functions as the complement of the noun your car. The agent is highly intelligent. The agent is highly intelligent. Highly intelligent here likewise is an adjectival phrase that functions as a complement, telling us the attributes and nature of the agents in question. The next function is object complement. An adjectival phrase can complement the objects. Like I've said in the previous classes, that complement supplies information needed to make an expression complete. Without the complement, the expression may not be complete or may not give us the required meaning. For example, she finds the job interesting. You can see that very interesting. She finds the job very interesting. Very interesting here is an adjectival phrase that complements the job. Now, for example, let's remove very interesting. She finds the job. She finds the job. It's still meaningful. The meaning there is that she has been looking for the job and she has been able to find it. The absence of very interesting, which is an adjectival phrase, will not give us the required meaning. But by the time we add very interesting to the sentence, she finds the job very interesting. Very interesting here functions as the complement of the object, the job. So what is very interesting here is the job. Not that she has been looking for the job and is able to find it, but after getting the job, there is something she enjoys in the job. And that's why we could use the adjectival phrase very interesting to complement the object job. The book made me anxious to study. The book made me anxious to study. Here we have the subject, made, verb, me, objects. Anxious to study complement the object, supply some information about the object. What happens to the object? The object is anxious to study. So in that place we have the anxious to study as object complements. Another function is post modifier in a noun phrase, meaning that an adjectival phrase does not only pre-modify in a noun phrase, it can also post modify a noun in a noun phrase. For example, the only nurse available at the hospital. The only nurse available at the hospital. If you look at the structure of a noun phrase, the only is a pre-modifier, pre-modifying the noun nurse, while the noun nurse is the head word. Available at the hospital is a post-modifier. Supplies some information on the nurse. Now, which nurse are we talking about? The nurse available at the hospital. So therefore, the adjectival phrase available at the hospital post-modifies the noun nurse. Likewise, the attitude quite terrible. The attitude quite terrible. We ask online that the attitude quite terrible is what she puts up. So therefore, there is a pre-modifier. Attitude is the noun head. Why quite terrible is a post-modifier. And what functions as a post-modifier is an adjectival phrase supplying some information of the nature of the attitude. So by looking at this, we have been able to explain what an adjectival phrase is: pre-modifier and post-modifier. So that's about adjectival phrase. But know that it performs the following function which have just been discussed. So thank you for being part of the class.